Welcome to Nancy Zieman TV. Today's topic is Speedy Hand Quilting by Machine. No, it's not a misnomer. You can get the look of hand quilting but stitch with ease using a machine. I thought this cheery table topper would be an ideal palette to showcase faux hand stitching around the supersized appliques. Are you curious? Let me show you how it's done. The star of Speedy Hand Quilting by Machine is Baby Lock Shashiko 2 machine, where we'll be stitching that beautiful even hand stitching. But before creating the stitching, we need to create the project. And then we have three options that you might like for this time of year with spring flowers, eggs, colorful eggs, or even hearts. And around the stitching of the appliques, we have the very even hand stitching that goes around the edges in order to give that finished look. Hand stitching is lovely. It gives a look of heirloom even when we're working with fun fabrics such as cotton and felt. The design that we are using is Mary Malari's table topping pattern. It has 6 various designs for various times of the year. And then inside you'll find the appliques, supersized appliques. I've used Steam a Seam 2 to trace some of the elements, just place the paper on top, trace the designs. Steam a Seam 2 has 2 pieces of protective paper that is sandwiched around a piece of fusible web. So you trace the designs, roughly cut it out, and then remove the backing. Now it's tacky on the underside, so at this point you can simply place it onto your fabric and hand press it down into place. Then cut out around the edges, traditional applique techniques, and then after cutting, remove the paper backing. We've decided to work with felt, to place the appliques on felt, and I've already positioned them on this table topper. You can use 5 or 3, it doesn't matter how many applique collections you use together, and then it's tacked into place and then permanently set it into place, just pressing, following the manufacturer's instructions. So you have them positioned. We call this speedy hand stitching, well it's also speedy sewing. Because we're using felt, we don't have to worry about the edges raveling. We could create a finished edge by using a rotary cutter with a decorative blade inserted. And then I'm just going to eyeball, if you wanted to mark you could, about 1 inch away, following the shape of the applique. And easily cut this. The first time I did this, honestly, I did mark it, but now I kind of know about where I'd like this edge to be. Just cut, and we have 1 little extra cut needed, and you can see the shape. If you'd like, you could add a second layer behind it. We added a purple layer behind the tan layer just to offset it. After we were complete, then we did some trimming, but you can see the look that you'd like. Now the appliques need to be positioned down, and I'm using Baby Lock's Melody machine with a clear thread in the top and just zigzagging around the edges just to hold them in place. You could do this very quickly, but we just want to hold them down so that the edges do not ravel. Now, it's time after doing the stitching to see the Shashiko 2 machine in action. Shashiko is a Japanese term for quilting. This machine mimics hand stitching by passing the thread through the fabric and then locking it on the underside of the fabric. It only has 1 thread, which is the bobbin, much like hand stitching, only 1 thread, but this time in a unique place. So when you take a look at the machine, you may think, well, there should be a top thread. It looks like it will be, but on the top of the machine is the mechanism for threading the bobbin. There isn't a tension guide, so there's no place to guide the thread. You see the flashing light. I have the flashing light at the bobbin to have the needle in the lower position. It stops in the lower position, or you can have it in the raised position. When you're winding the bobbin, you would depress the button so that you could get it at the lower position, would have the flashing light. The adjustments that are needed are for the stitch length and the spacing. And on the side of the machine, it goes from 2 to 5 and 2 to 5 again on the spacing. We did a little testing, and the 5 and the 3 setting is where we'd like to keep the stitch. Just for this project, you're going to do a test before you do the stitching. Now the thread, we mentioned the thread. In the bobbin, I have Katona 30 weight thread, and as you look as a close-up of the bobbin area, you see as I'm turning the flywheel by hand, the thread catches in a lever on the side that passes to the side. When we start to stitch, you'll see how this all comes together. It's really unique. Half of the foot is 1/4 of an inch wide, so I'm going to align the foot along the applique so that I get 1/4 of an inch stitch. And as I start to stitch, notice how the needle goes in the fabric. In every other stitch, the thread is looped up around the mechanism next to the needle. This creates the hand stitch look. Every other stitch. It's as you sew at an even, constant pace. It's very rhythmic. It's very relaxing. For me, hand stitching is not relaxing. This is totally relaxing. Since I have the needle in the down position, when I pivot, the foot automatically raises just enough so I can easily pivot the fabric. When I start to sew again, that foot goes down ever so tightly against the fabric. It's very easy to pivot. It doesn't take work at all. So you just sew at a very even speed, stop, pivot, turn, sew again. You're going to be hand stitching by machine around a lot of appliques. And what we did in our project is to do another stitching around the outer edge. When you are stopping, in this case starting and stopping around the outer edge, you'll need to consider how to work with the thread. Notice as I'm reaching my starting point, I'm going to pull the thread extra long. And you'll now see that in the bed of the machine there's a thread cutter. Loop the thread around the thread cutter to hold the thread taut and then cut. This position is where you're going to start and stop each of your stitchings. If we take a close-up look at my finished table topper, you'll see that the stitching goes all the way around both the outer layer and around each applique. In the beginning, I did some trimming with the decorative rotary blade around the edges. Please do that again, whatever width you'd like to show that little accent color. But working with table toppers is not exactly what you're going to limit your Shashiko stitching to. There are so many other options. Use the Shashiko stitching for traditional quilting, such as you see on this mini quilt. Even stitching is so easy. Another option is to use the Shashiko stitching for accessories. Handbags and scarves would make a great place to showcase this stitching. And finally, you may want to work with it for top stitching on some home decorations, table toppers, pillows, and placemats. What a great contrast that this machine could give you with a great stitching. Would you like to hand quilt by machine? Well, take a Shashiko 2 machine on a test drive at your Baby Lock dealer. They can also tell you more about the featured notions in this video. But tell them Nancy sent you.